Lil Durk is in serious trouble, but not in the way the media wants you to believe. The federal government has been holding him in custody for over a year now, and as his trial date approaches, what's becoming increasingly clear is that the prosecution might not have the evidence they initially claimed they had. And now, with just weeks to go before the trial is supposed to start, the feds are scrambling to add additional charges. This is a critical moment in the case, and what's happening right now tells you everything you need to know about how weak their actual evidence is. Let me break down what's actually happening here, because this case has become a masterclass in how the federal government operates when they feel like they have a high-profile defendant. So Lil Durk, whose real name is Durk Devontae Banks, was arrested in October 2024 on federal murder-for-hire charges. The prosecution alleges that he placed a $1 million bounty on rapper Quando Rondo sometime in 2022. The alleged motivation was retaliation for the November 2020 killing of King Von, a close associate of Lil Durk and another OTF artist.
Huge update in the Lil Durk case. His defense is probably feeling good this morning after seeing the bond motion filed by OTF Didi. Now, what Didi's bond motion says is quite frankly shocking. He says that on May 13th last week, the government told his lawyer, hey, we might be adding new charges. Excuse me? New charges? This trial was supposed to already happen. It's scheduled for August 20th. Do you know what would happen if new charges were filed? I'll tell you, but first let's just talk about these new charges and this bond motion. Now, the bond motion being filed by OTF Didi, this is the guy the Fed said would pay the bounties, cause them to be paid. Didi says, first off, hang on, you got to give me a bond for a couple of reasons. First off, the original indictment that said that I was causing the bonds to be paid, that's not even in the new indictment anymore. And then last week, the Fed's sitting here talking about they're about to add charges. How are you going to add charges when the trial should have already happened and is now scheduled to happen? And now you're going to add charges. You're going to keep me locked up forever. Didi's saying you got to let me out.
Who was killed during an altercation with Quando Rondo outside an Atlanta nightclub. According to the federal indictment, Lil Durk orchestrated a plot where members of his OTF collective, only the family, traveled from Chicago to Los Angeles to track and attempt to kill Quando Rondo at a gas station. But here's the critical detail. They didn't succeed in their supposed mission. Instead of killing Quando Rondo, they ended up shooting and killing his cousin, Saviaya Luh Pab Robinson. Quando Rondo himself was unharmed. Now here's what's important. Lil Durk has been sitting in federal custody for well over a year waiting for trial. And during that entire time, he has been repeatedly denied bond. Every motion to release him has been denied. He's currently at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles. He's maintained his innocence throughout this entire ordeal. He pleaded not guilty to all charges. And his defense team, which includes Drew Findling and Brian Steele, two of the top criminal defense attorneys in the country, has been systematically dismantling the government's case piece by piece. But here's where things get interesting. The trial was originally scheduled for January 2026, then it got pushed to April, then it got pushed to May, then it got pushed to August. Each delay has been requested by the defense team and co-defendants who need more time to review what prosecutors are calling an avalanche of discovery material. We're talking about 230 gigabytes of digital evidence and 20,000 pages of documents. And now, with just about 2 months left before the August trial date, the federal prosecutors just dropped a bombshell. They're now claiming they want to add additional charges to the indictment. New charges that apparently involve conduct from a 2019 Atlanta incident and a 2022 Chicago incident. This is a huge red flag, and here's why it matters. When you're this close to trial, adding new charges is essentially a Hail Mary move. It's a sign that the prosecution is not confident in their original case. If they had him dead to rights on the murder-for-hire charges, why would they need to add anything? The fact that they're scrambling to pile on additional charges with just weeks to go before trial suggests one thing. Their original case is much weaker than they initially presented it to be. Let's talk about what they actually have on Lil Durk. According to everything that's been filed in court, the prosecution's case essentially boils down to this. There's a text message where Lil Durk allegedly tells someone, don't book any flights under any names associated with me, and then they have testimony from cooperating witnesses. People who were actually involved in the alleged plot who are now working with federal prosecutors and willing to testify against Lil Durk. That's it. That's their case. A text message and witness testimony from people who have every incentive to lie and cooperate with the government in exchange for reduced sentences. Now what they don't have is physical evidence. They don't have recorded phone calls of Lil Durk ordering a hit. They don't have financial records showing him paying for the shooting. They don't have wire transfers. They don't have video recordings of him discussing the plot. They don't have direct evidence of any kind connecting him to the alleged bounty. What they have is the word of people who are actually there and are now cooperating with the government. This is crucial because in a federal case, especially one involving murder for hire, the government needs to prove a quid pro quo. They need to prove that Lil Durk promised something of value in exchange for the murder. This isn't just about him saying something happened. It's about proving a contract, essentially. A deal was made. You do this, I'll give you that. And here's where the prosecution's case gets even weaker. They initially claimed in the indictment that OTF co-defendant Alec Dede Wilson was responsible for paying the bounty at Lil Durk's direction. That was their theory. Durk ordered Dede to pay the shooters, but then something happened. Dede Wilson decided to go to trial too. He didn't take a plea deal, and suddenly that entire theory disappeared from the indictment. The allegation that Dede paid the bounty under Durk's direction just vanished, so the prosecution had to pivot. They had to find a new theory to explain what Lil Durk allegedly promised the shooters in exchange for killing Quando Rondo. And what did they come up with? They claimed the bounty was paid in the form of music opportunities, putting the shooters in music videos, giving them features on songs, creating lucrative music opportunities through the OTF collective. Now stop and think about that for a second. The government is claiming that Lil Durk orchestrated a murder in exchange for putting people in music videos. These people who were supposedly rewarded with music opportunities were already part of the OTF collective. They already had access to Lil Durk. They already had music opportunities available to them just by being associated with OTF. Some of them were family members of King Von. They had personal motivations for revenge that had nothing to do with any promise from Lil Durk. The prosecution's theory that placing people in music videos was the quid pro quo for a murder is incredibly weak. It's not a specific promise. It's not economically valuable in a way that justifies a murder for hire charge. It's vague, it's circumstantial, and it's something that would have happened anyway as part of the normal functioning of the OTF collective. But here's what's really telling about this entire situation. The fact that the prosecution had to abandon their original theory about Dede paying the bounty and shift to this music video theory shows that they're grasping at straws. They didn't have the evidence they thought they had. They couldn't prove monetary payment, so they had to get creative and invent a new theory that's even harder to prove. And now they're trying to add additional charges from incidents in 2019 and 2022 that are completely unrelated to the 2022 shooting that resulted in Luh Pab's death. The Atlanta incident from 2019.
That's right. We're outside APD headquarters now, as you said, and his lawyer says Lil Durk is still in the Fulton County Jail as his legal team works to get a bond set. But before he surrendered, we were with him in his lawyer's office. You're about to surrender as we speak.
Yeah.
How come?
Because I have nothing to hide. Like, I have nothing to run from.
You are crazy.
A rapper's ride. Soon after we spoke, Durk Banks, a.k.a. the performer Lil Durk, emerged from his lawyer's space and headed toward an SUV. Soon after that, he stepped out in front of the Fulton County Jail. One of his lawyers says he was swiftly taken into custody there, having swiftly flown back to Atlanta after he found out he was wanted.
We found out we had a warrant. We was actually on tour. Once I heard, I immediately came back.
He's willing to turn himself in and take care of what he needs to take care of.
We immediately canceled the tour.
He's got a multi-million-dollar salary music career going.
Did you do it? Did you shoot this man? Did you commit the other crimes of which you're accused?
No.
Warrants involving an incident in February on North Avenue involved charges including criminal attempt to commit murder and aggravated assault. One document indicates an Atlanta police investigator said to the best of his knowledge, Banks was employed or associated with a criminal street gang to conduct or participate in gang activity, shooting at the victim while co-defendants shot and robbed him. Is he involved in a gang?
No.
Banks indicated his lawyer told him not to discuss the specific facts of the case. But
Is particularly interesting because Lil Durk was actually cleared of those charges. When the Atlanta District Attorney dropped the charges, they specifically stated that King Von was the one who committed the shooting, not Lil Durk. The Atlanta DA exonerated him. So how exactly is the federal government planning to use a charge that was investigated, prosecuted, and then dismissed as exculpatory evidence against him now? The Chicago incident is similarly problematic. The defense team objected to including that incident early in the case, arguing it had nothing to do with the current charges. The prosecution initially agreed and withdrew that evidence, but now with just weeks to go before trial, they want to bring it back as a way to establish a pattern of behavior. They want to show the jury that Lil Durk has a history of hiring people to commit violence. But if that evidence was so important, why did they agree to withdraw it in the first place? This pattern of behavior from the prosecution indicates desperation. They're not following the rules of discovery properly. They're not managing their evidence effectively. They're scrambling because they know their case is weak. Now let's talk about Lil Durk's defense strategy and why his legal team has been so effective. Drew Feinling and Brian Steele are two of the best criminal defense attorneys in the country. They're known for taking on impossible cases and finding ways to undermine the government's narrative. And they've already scored several major victories in this case. First, they got lyrics excluded from the indictment. The prosecution originally wanted to use a lyric where Lil Durk rapped about green light and referenced someone's son being dead. This lyric, when played next to a video of Quando Rondo's reaction to his cousin's death, would be incredibly damaging to Durk in front of a jury. But Feinling proved that those lyrics were written well before the shooting. The timeline didn't match, so the prosecution had to remove them from the indictment. Second, they forced the prosecution to change the timeline of the alleged conspiracy. The government initially said the conspiracy started in August 2022 when the shooting happened. But Feinling showed that if the conspiracy only started in August, there wasn't enough time to arrange flights, plan logistics, and recruit shooters. So the prosecution changed their story and said the conspiracy actually started back in November 2020 when King Von was killed. But that change required them to bring in Instagram comments, podcast comments, and lyrics as evidence to fill in the narrative gap, which made their case even weaker and more circumstantial. Third, they exposed the weakness in the bounty payment theory. The prosecution initially claimed D.D. Wilson was paying the shooters on Durk's orders, but Feinling and his team questioned how they could possibly prove this. And when D.D. Wilson didn't take a plea deal, the whole theory collapsed. The prosecution had to scramble to invent a new theory about music video opportunities being the payment. Fourth, they got the prosecution to add the stalking charge, but this is actually a win for the defense. Even though it might seem like the opposite, the stalking charge doesn't require a quid pro quo. It doesn't require proof of a bounty or payment. It only requires proof that Durk was directing people to follow and stalk Quando Rondo. By adding this charge, the prosecution is essentially admitting that they can't prove the core element of murder for hire.
If the feds have you cooked on a murder for hire, you're going to do life for a 2024 LA murder, why aren't they taking it to trial already? And why, with just 2 months left to trial, they're talking about adding charges from a 2019 Atlanta incident. Newsflash, the 2019 Atlanta incident was investigated, charged by the Fulton County DA, and dismissed. Uh-oh. And then there's a Chicago incident. Earlier in this case, they tried to bring that Chicago incident in as evidence. The defense objected. Hey, this has nothing to do with this case. Why are you trying to bring that in? The government said, okay, we'll withdraw it. But with just a couple months left for that trial, August 20th, they want to go and bring back these incidents and these old charges. That tells you something. That tells you that they do not have him dead to rights and that he needs to take a plea or he's going to do life. That tells you his criminal defense is very much alive. And it reiterates the point in every criminal case that as much as the media wants to paint people as cooked or innocent, you never know until the game is played. And so you hold your cards tight and you learn that on day 1 of your arrest, you're not guilty. On day 30, you're not guilty. You could go years of pre-trial, weeks of actual trial, jury seated. But until every single last witness has sang their song and the lawyers have given their closing,
which is the exchange of money or value for the murder. This is important because it gives the jury another option. Instead of murder for hire, they can convict on stalking, which is a much lesser charge. And this suggests to any reasonable person that the government knows they might not be able to prove murder for hire beyond a reasonable doubt. Now let's talk about what makes Lil Durk's situation particularly unjust. He's been held without bond for over a year. He's been denied multiple bond motions. Meanwhile, his co-defendants are either cooperating with the government or being given more reasonable bail amounts. Lil Durk is the one person in this entire conspiracy who is maintaining his innocence. He's the one person who is not taking a plea deal. He's the one person who is saying, I didn't do this, take me to trial. And because of that, he's being treated the harshest. He's being held in the worst conditions. He's denied bond. His music career has essentially been put on hold. He released an album called Deep Thoughts while awaiting trial, and it debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, but he's not able to promote it. He's not able to tour. He's not able to live his life. Meanwhile, his co-defendants who are cooperating with the government are getting deals. They're getting reduced sentences. They're getting to go home, and their cooperation is being used against him. They're telling the government, yeah, Durk told us to do this. Durk promised us money. Durk organized the whole thing, and the government is using their word, the word of criminals and snitches, as the foundation of their case against the one person who is maintaining his innocence. And here's something that's often overlooked. Some of the people involved in this alleged conspiracy had personal motivations that had nothing to do with Lil Durk. Otavani, for example, is King Von's blood cousin. He didn't need Durk to offer him anything. He didn't need a bounty or music opportunities. His cousin was killed. He had every reason in the world to want revenge on the people he believed were responsible. So why is the government even arguing that Durk had...
Durk update, the trial has been pushed to August 2026. If you listen to the noise, all you're going to hear is Durk is cooked, nobody's there for Durk, motion denied, but that's just the noise. The fact of the matter is his trial team has won a number of points in this case. The indictments, there's been 3 indictments, and each time the allegations against Durk have thinned out. Some of the evidence that they wanted to use has actually been withdrawn so that the judge didn't have to exclude it. I'm going to take you through it piece by piece. I'll leave the best parts for the end. First, when they charged Durk, the main allegation about him rapping in his lyrics was this lyric about him going, told me they got an addy, got location, green light, seen your son on the news screaming, no, no. Okay, that lyric. If you play that lyric, then you play the video of Quando next to the murdered victim, no, no, you would have won major points with a jury. That lyric's not in the indictment anymore because Finling showed that those lyrics were written well before the murder. A couple more points. When they bought this case, they said the conspiracy started in August 2022. That's when Durk arranged to get these rentals, these flights. That's when he made arrangements for the bounty. Then they switched that and they said, actually, the conspiracy started back when Von died in November 2020. And they had to do that because they needed to bring in more lyrics. They needed to bring in Instagram comments and the podcast comments to build that whole story because it wasn't enough to just show him paying shooters and show him
to promise him something. Why is the government arguing that Durk orchestrated something that these people would have done anyway? The answer is because without that argument, they don't have a case. Without being able to prove that Durk promised something valuable in exchange for the murder, they can't prove murder for hire, and they know that, which is why they're panicking, which is why they're adding charges just weeks before trial. At this point, with just 2 months to go before the August trial date, everyone in the legal world is watching this case closely. The question isn't whether Lil Durk is innocent or guilty. The question is whether the federal government can prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt with the evidence they have, and based on what's been filed in court and what's been revealed during the discovery process, the answer seems to be no. The government arrested Lil Durk and held him without bond based on what appears to be a weak case built primarily on the testimony of cooperating witnesses. They don't have physical evidence, they don't have recorded confessions, they don't have financial records proving payment. They have text messages and witness testimony, and with the best defense attorneys in the country representing him, that's not going to be enough to convict him of murder for hire. The addition of new charges just weeks before trial is a desperate move. It's an admission that they don't have what they need to secure a conviction on the original charges. It's the federal government trying to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. But Lil Durk's legal team has proven they're more than capable of handling this. They've already dismantled significant portions of the government's case. They've exposed the weaknesses in the prosecution's theories, and they're going to be ready for trial on August 25th. What's happening to Lil Durk is a grave injustice. A man has been held in custody for over a year without bond. His career has been put on hold. His life has been disrupted, and all based on a case that appears to rely primarily on the testimony of criminals who are cooperating with the government in exchange for reduced sentences. The judicial system is supposed to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. But what we're seeing in this case is the federal government using their power and resources to build a case against someone that they might not actually be able to prove guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a problem. Let me know what you think about this situation in the comments. Do you think the federal government has a strong case against Lil Durk? Do you think adding charges just weeks before trial is a sign of weakness? Do you believe Lil Durk will be convicted when this goes to trial? Drop your thoughts below and make sure you subscribe because we're going to be following this trial very closely. When the trial starts in August, we'll be breaking down the evidence presented, the testimony given, and what it all means. This is going to be one of the biggest cases in hip-hop history, and you're going to want to stay informed about how it unfolds. So subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Peace.